Hello. So for today's video, I thought I would make some sounds on my yoga equipment. I'll just tell you some various stories that took place in yoga class. I'm going to start off with just a couple sort of like funny stories about yoga, and then I'm going to get more serious and talk about some different tips and strategies for dealing with anxiety and intrusive thoughts and just being on the right path, being kind to yourself. So if that sounds good, stick around. This is a foam roller. So I definitely will use this a lot on like my hamstrings. If you're someone that gets like sore muscles in your thighs, really recommend getting one of these. Super helpful. Something that you can do to yourself at home. Work out those knots. Super beneficial. Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about yoga class, a couple of funny things that have happened, and then I'm going to jump into some more of like the advice about how to relax and some anxiety tips. But first, let's laugh about some people that were in my yoga class. Because I think that laughter is actually a very important medicine. And, it's important just to have some lighthearted distractions sometimes. So, I'm sure there are some very lovely people that do yoga. Actually, I know there are. I live in a city that just so happens to be filled with a lot of narcissists. So you can probably guess, I would imagine, what city I live in just based on that. Just think of like the city that you would think would be the narcissist capital of the world. So that's where I live. I wish I didn't, but I do. And so as one might imagine, when you go to these yoga classes, they can often be filled with some sort of contemptible people, which is why I do most of my workouts at home. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that I've overheard while on the yoga mat in the yoga studio. So comment number one. It was before class, and we were like laying out on our mats, just kind of stretching, getting ready for the class to begin, getting whatever equipment we need and putting it on the mat. Usually they have you got, some various things, and just kind of set it around yourself. Do you mind? And so I'm laying there just like pretending to stretch, and there's this girl next to me who is recounting that she went on a date last night, and her friend asks her, "How did your date go?" And her response was, "Well, I wasn't that into him, but of course he liked me because, I'm like magic." She didn't say this as a joke. She said this like dead serious. At which point I like laughed out loud. I didn't mean to, it just kind of came out. I'm all for having self-confidence, I'm all for, speaking positively to yourself. But I think you should cap out before you get to the point where you're describing yourself as being magic. And she said it like that. I'm magic. And so that is the type of girl that is in this class, just to give you an idea. And then another example of something I overheard someone saying in yoga. This girl had just graduated from I don't know if it was graduate school or what, but her friend was asking her like what she's gonna do with her degree, and her response was, I was talking with people about this, and we all just decided like I need to use my pretty for good. Like she was like a Marvel comic book character, and like that was her superpower, and she was gonna be like fighting crime with her beautiful face. And it's just like, wow, like the level of narcissism in these yoga classes sometimes is just like, it's intense. So I do a lot of my stretching here at home now. I just can't deal. I do my, I use the machines there, but I try to stay away from the classes at this point. It's just, it's too dangerous. Also, I'm really not that good. Like, if we're gonna be honest, I'm not that good at yoga. I'm not that flexible. Like, if you compared me to a man, I'm probably flexible, but like in comparison to women, who are the ones that are predominantly in that class, like I'm not that flexible. And although they like to say that no one's judging you in this class, they're judging you. They're definitely judging you. And I don't need that in my life. Because I know I'm the worst in the class. Fully aware of that. But they don't need to know that. So I just like to be bad and mediocre in the comfort of my own home. It's kind of a nice sound. Let's just appreciate that for a moment. Actually, one of the first times I ever experienced like ASMR tingles was with a foam roller. I'm just remembering that. So I was on the elliptical, and directly in front of me, like right in my field of vision, was like a personal trainer, and she was like using this on her client, and she was like really doing a good job of that, and it just looked like such bliss. I was so envious of the person that was getting foam rolled, and I was just getting like all these relaxing tingles. And this is before like I knew what ASMR was. I was probably creeping her out because I was watching a little too intently. But I was like transfixed. It was just so relaxing. Do we like scratching? So it can kind of make like a sticky hand thing too. Let's see. Get repositioned for this. It is like ungodly hot in my house right now, just FYI. Speaking of it being ungodly hot, have any of you ever had the misfortune of going to one of those hot yoga classes? I tried that, you can't even really say once because I lasted like 5 minutes before I left, but so I tried that a quarter. I tried that for not even a quarter of the class, a fraction of the class. My friend, who apparently is like a sociopath, invited me to it. I didn't realize the degree to which they would crank the temperature up in that class because I'm not a masochist. I didn't assume that they would like be actively trying to murder us. I just thought maybe it would be like 75 degrees. Like not cool. I didn't think it was gonna be like over 100 degrees in the room and super high humidity. So yeah, I was in that class for about 5 minutes. And then I just like flipped my friend off and I left the class. And I told her to lose my number. I didn't tell her that part. I did flip her off though. And I did walk out and ask for my money back. And they're like, oh, we can sign you up for a different class if you need to leave. And I was like, no, I'm never coming back. This was the worst mistake of my life. And not a mistake I will ever make again. You either are a hot yoga person or you are not a hot yoga person. There's like no in between there. Yeah, I don't like punishing myself. It's not really my deal. If I wanted to punish myself, I would have stayed working at LAUSD. Little dig for LAUSD. All right, moving on. Unpopular opinion, I feel like everyone in that class is a huge show-off. Everyone wants to prove that they're more flexible than the person next to them. So, like when you're doing stretches, for example, the teacher will say, those of you that want to push yourself harder, those of you that want to work harder, something along those lines. I tune out at that moment and don't even look to see what that example is going to be because I'm good at the bare minimum. I'm fine with mediocre. I'm not trying to set any records. I'm not trying to set the world on fire. I'm just there to chill out. But inevitably, I'm always right next to the person that wants the teacher to come show them like what's the farthest they can possibly take it, and like ends up doing a handstand and like levitating off the floor. My favorite part of yoga is a pose called corpse pose. And it's a pose where you just lay on your back as if you're dead. And I really excel. I excel at corpse pose. Really, really good at corpse pose. So corpse pose comes at the very end of the class. Once you've finished everything, and you just lay down on your back and you have your arms like up, palms up, your legs are kind of just, like straight out in front of you. And ideally, however, this doesn't happen nearly often enough, the teacher will like do like a guided meditation. But most of the time they're lazy and they don't do that. But that's my favorite part. When you lay there and they just like say like, oh, and now you feel, every muscle on your body is relaxing. And you feel all the tension leaving your forehead, your brow is relaxed, your jaw is unclenched, and they just like guide you through every muscle in your body relaxing. I love that. Sadly, most of the time you just hear new age music and you lie there for a few minutes. But in a perfect world, they do a guided meditation. There was a teacher I had in junior college that just was like cream of the crop for the guided meditation, and that was the first yoga class I ever had. So the bar was set like so high, and I just thought that everyone did that, and then I've been like basically disappointed every class ever since then. It's never been as good. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like a little bit older. So when I was a kid and like when I was in high school, people didn't talk about like anxiety or going to therapy or needing maybe like medications for anxiety or coping skills or really anything that had to do with mental health. It just wasn't really something that was openly discussed when I was in high school, and it wasn't something that, at least in my family or like any of my friends' families, like it was not something that like parents really inquired about. No one was really like checking up on their kids' mental health at that age. And I was probably in need of some sort of intervention because I was pretty anxious. I was kind of a worrier. But, I was completely undiagnosed and not treated. So there's like good things and bad things about that. The good news is that I had to develop a lot of coping skills and a lot of strategies to deal with anxiety that I probably would not have ever developed. They were things that I just had to essentially cure on my own. And the negative part about that is it was highly unpleasant. And I sort of like struggled for a really long time inwardly because I didn't know that anyone else, felt this way. And at the time, I definitely would have like panic attacks and just probably got into like a cycle of just being like chronically anxious. So what I think can happen is when you get so used to anxiety and living with anxiety, that just becomes like, your baseline, your normal. And it's almost, this is an outdated reference, but it's almost like there's a record player and the needle has just gotten stuck in this groove where you're just chronically sort of in this state of like fight or flight all the time. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort to shift your brain waves in a way to like lift that needle and get you into a new normal. So I studied a lot about the brain and about the nervous system and actually understanding anxiety from like a physiological and like scientific standpoint. And for me, that actually really helped. I majored in psychology in college, and I just took a lot of classes on the brain and behavior and sort of understanding that even though this was a very unpleasant feeling, my body meant well. So it's like when we feel anxious, our body's trying to do right by us. Our body is attempting to give us what we need to get out of what it perceives as a dangerous situation. However, what we recognize as a dangerous situation is the problem. First of all, most of the times, we're not ever actually in danger. It's a perceived and imaginary threat, and not one that our body needs to be reacting to or running away from. So, what I've been able to do, and what's helped me, is I've sort of trained myself to turn off my thoughts. Because that's where my anxiety stems. And I'm sure everybody's anxiety sort of comes from something different. Maybe it starts off as a physiological symptom where, your heart is maybe beating a little bit differently. Maybe your breathing's a little bit differently. You feel slightly lightheaded for 1 second. Maybe it starts as a, physiological response in your body. People that have anxiety tend to be more acutely aware of what's happening in their body. Whereas someone who's more relaxed, has a more relaxed disposition, might feel some sort of shift from homeostasis in their body, but not have a fear reaction to that. Whereas a lot of people that have anxiety, they feel slightly different in some sort of way, and that immediately registers as danger. And what I realized is that I was playing a really, really negative tape in my head in terms of the thoughts I would think once that had been set into motion. So, for me, learning meditation and learning how to stop my thoughts, that was a game changer. So it's not that I never feel that initial push of anxiety. I'll still feel that, but I don't get on the train and go on the ride with it, if that makes sense. It's just there's an acknowledgement of I feel different, I feel a stressor, and then I completely and 100% turn off my thoughts. Because I realized all my thoughts were gasoline on the fire. My thoughts were, I'm gonna feel like this forever. Oh, it's gonna get so bad that I might pass out. Oh, my heart's gonna start racing. It was just this cycle where I was working myself up more and more and more, and then that would create more physiological symptoms, and I would get more filled with fear and dread. So for me, as soon as I feel that initial hint of adrenaline starting to come, thoughts 100% done, no thinking. And I really focus on my environment, and I 100% slow down my breathing. So say I'm in the car, for example, and all of a sudden, who knows what triggered it, but I just feel slightly off. Before, that would trigger a panic feeling in me. Oh my God, what if I pass pass out while I'm driving, and blah, 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 and it just keeps going. I don't allow myself to think any of those things. I feel the weird feeling, and then I just really start paying attention to everything that I can see. I'm noticing the colors of the cars around me. I'm noticing how the sun is hitting them. I'm noticing if there's a breeze and it's, moving through the trees. Noticing everything around me in complete, vivid detail. I'm not thinking anything about myself at all. And I'm not checked out to the point where I'm in danger being on the road. I'm still I'm more aware of my surroundings. I'm outside of my own head. I'm breathing slowly in and out, usually count to 4 through my nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out through my mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all the meanwhile, I'm just observing. Without any judgments, without any analysis. It's all just taking it in, taking in any visualizations with 0 attachment. And it normally just passes on its own for me. So I don't know, maybe that'll be somewhat helpful for you. I heard somewhere, and I mentioned this in a video, if you're someone that does a lot of sort of catastrophic thinking where you think of a lot of worst case scenarios, it's not a good healthy brain state to be in, but it's really hard to tell yourself to just stop it 100%. And I don't do this anymore, but I did find it helpful at the time, and I recommended it to people. You can tell yourself, I'm not going to think about that right now. So say a really intrusive negative thought pops into your head at a time when you're trying to accomplish something, you're in the middle of doing something else. You can say to yourself, I'm not going to entertain this thought right now. I'll think about it at 3 o'clock. And so you've sort of taken away its power. And then you set an actual time, not close to your bedtime, but a very neutral midday time. And maybe you'll assign yourself 5 minutes. And you'll set a timer. And you'll just allow yourself during that time period to jot down all your worries, everything that's upsetting to you, all your anxieties, all your worst case scenarios, and you'll get them out of your head onto a piece of paper. And one, it's cathartic to take your thoughts, which can seem really infinite when they're inside your head. They seem so limitless. And when you put them on paper, there's something just about seeing it diminishes them. And also, you've taken away the power of these thoughts by allowing them to be these interrupting visitors that can just pop into your house whenever they want, You're telling them what time they're going to come over, and you're telling them what time they're going to leave at. And you're the one that's in the driver's seat. And then after you have written them all down and your timer's gone off, you shut your notebook and you don't think about them again for the rest of the day until the next day at the same time. And when they come up in your head, you just have to say to yourself, I'll think about that tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I'm not going to think about that right now. And you allow yourself to take vacations from your worries and your stressors, Because when you're thinking those things, most likely you're like having negative chemicals go throughout your body. You know, if you're thinking negative thoughts, like your cortisol levels, like things are going to start to raise in your body. And that's not healthy. And it, like, you know, weakens your immune system, does a lot of negative things. So you don't want those thoughts just running rampant in your head at all times without any sort of system of like checks and balances. You know, you need to be like the prison warden, so to speak. And like you're going to allow them out of their cell for a certain time in the day, and then you're going to put them back in. But you don't allow, you know, there's an expression like you don't allow the, you know, lunatics to control the asylum, and that's the same with these thoughts. And it's, you know, I think it's important to see the distinction between your anxiety and yourself. They're two separate things. You know, like when you have a stomach ache or when you have a headache, you don't think that you are your stomach ache or you are your headache. You see it as something separate from you. But when we're having anxiety, you know, our thoughts seem so much more real and so much scarier than, you know, a cold or a headache or a stomach ache. But it's still separate from you. It's just this outdated, primitive system that's trying to protect you from dangers in your environment. You know, our ancestors needed to have that strong fight or flight reaction to get away from true life-threatening dangers. And society has changed at such a rapid pace that our bodies haven't been able to adapt as quickly as society has changed. And so we have these systems in our body that were designed for a very, very different lifestyle that aren't serving us. But we just need to recognize that they aren't us. They're designed to help. They're sometimes doing more harm than good. But we need to tell them that they're not allowed to just be running rampant in our head all day long. So that's my little chat on sort of like intrusive thoughts and anxiety. I do think that practicing meditation, even if it's short, you know, even if it's just for like the first 5 or 10 minutes when you first wake up, you really just try to be aware of like the sounds that you're hearing, how your muscles feel, how your body feels. Just turning your thoughts off. If a thought comes into your head, you just recognize it and then just let it float back out. Don't attach any judgment to it. Don't try to force it out of your head. Just kind of watch it like drift away. Just like you would if there was like a stick or something just bobbing along a river. You're just watching as it gets further away from you. It's not of you. It's just passing through. So I feel like that's helpful. Physical exercise, being connected to your body, making your body stronger, healthier, eating as healthy as you can. What we put into our body can have a very big effect on how we feel. You know, I mean, it's a simple analogy, but obviously if you were just putting the worst worst possible things into your car wouldn't run properly. You'd have issues. You'd want to use gasoline that was going to be helpful and not destroy your car. I shouldn't be using car analogies because I don't know anything about cars. But, I think we just, sometimes like someone will say like they're feeling anxious. And then like, you ask them what they ate that day and they're like, oh, I had like 3 energy drinks and like hot Cheetos. And you're like, well, of course you feel a little off. Like you just have all these horrible chemicals in you. So, be aware of that. Caffeine intake, all those energy drinks can definitely impact anxiety levels. Yoga cannot be helpful as long as there's not really annoying girls next to you. But, the good thing about YouTube is, this is what I do a lot, there's so many really good yoga classes you can just take inside your own house. Just, put a YouTube video in. There's like all these different yoga videos. And there's like 30-day challenges and all sorts of things. And then, once you've done it for a while, you start to kind of have enough. I don't know if that's a good sound. You have enough of a repertoire that you can just sort of go through the motions without having to watch the videos. I don't really watch a video that much anymore. I kind of know the moves that I like. So just be aware of how you talk to yourself. Don't say things to yourself that you wouldn't allow other people to say to you. We wouldn't allow other people to speak to us the way that we speak to ourselves. We would cut those people out of our lives, like, hopefully, in a, heartbeat if somebody said some of the things to us that we say to ourselves. And you have to be, you want to catch those thoughts. Be like, no, I'm not going to talk to myself like that. I think it's very important the way that we talk to ourselves, the mantra that we tell ourselves. I try, because I think it's my nature to want to feel in control of situations. And so I try to tell myself, like, I trust, sort of like the universe, I trust destiny, I trust whatever's meant to be will be. I try to, like, get myself out of this mindset of feeling like I need to corral things, like a certain direction, and to just allow life to unfold. What do we think of the nails? So I went to the nail salon the other day, and I asked for white, and the lady was not, she didn't want to do it. She didn't think that was a good color. She's like, you want white? I was like, yeah. And then she tried to show me some other colors, and I was like, no, I definitely want white. And I could tell she was like painting her to paint them this color. And like when we finished, I was saying like how much like I like the color, and I was like, doesn't like nobody ever picks this color? And she's like, no. But I don't know, I kind of like it. I felt like they would be good for ASMR. I feel like they kind of like pop, you know? Lots of times I do like the French tip, or I do like just a very light pink. But I felt like these would, I don't know, have more impact. But yeah, the nail lady was not a fan, and she let it be known. But you have to stand your ground. Even when, people are telling you that is an ugly choice. I think it's important to just be true to yourself in more important issues than your manicure color. But in general, I think it's really important to not let other people's opinions of you define you or determine your actions. I think that, like, theoretically we all have a path that we're sort of like destined to be on. And the further that we get from that path, that's like our destiny. I think the more we feel it in our like gut and our soul in terms of depression and anxiety. Like, I think our body knows when we're not in alignment, and that when we're not on the path that we're meant to be on. And we can try to sort of like lie to ourselves, but we can't really lie to our bodies. That's like the interesting thing. You can lie to your head, you can tell yourself all sorts of things, but your body is like the ultimate barometer for whether or not that's true. Hence why people, get hooked up to like the lie detector test and all different, biofeedback machines and whatnot, because no matter what we say, our body knows when those words are true or not, and we have a different feeling inside of us when we're doing things that, are not the path that we're meant to be on, and our body feels that. I'm gonna have to wrap this up because the gardeners are starting right now, but I hope you have a nice day or night, and I will see you soon.